Hey guys, happy Wednesday. Today I'm going to teach you how to make red velvet cake. Let's get started. So before I get started with making my batter, there are a couple of things that I need to do. The first one is make my own buttermilk. I don't know about you guys, but I don't typically have buttermilk at home. So there's a pretty easy way to make it yourself. So here I have 1 cup of milk because we need 1 cup of buttermilk. And here I have 1 tablespoon of white vinegar. You can also do this using lemon juice. It would be the same amount. And I'm just going to add the white vinegar into my milk, and I'm going to give it a little stir. So the white vinegar is very acidic, so it is going to start to curdle the milk, which is what we want. Buttermilk is acidic, so you basically just have to take your milk and also make it acidic. So now we're going to set this to the side to let it kind of hang out and curdle a little bit. I'm going to put this over to the side. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to preheat my oven. The oven needs to be at 350 degrees. And the last thing that I need to do before I get started is grease my pans. So I have 2 8-inch cake pans. I'm going to take some canola oil spray. I'm going to spray the bottoms and spray up the sides. Make sure that I get it really well covered. And then I'm going to dust my pans with some cocoa powder. I'm just going to pour a little in the bottom, and then I'm just going to start shaking it around until the whole bottom and sides are covered. If you kind of tap it, you'll find that it helps to shake it around a little bit. It won't be all stuck in one place. Kind of got to beat on it a little bit, but I'm going to keep doing this until it's all covered, and then I'll do it to the other one. So my 2 8-inch cake pans are greased and dusted with cocoa powder. What this does is it makes it so that the cake really isn't going to stick to the pan. Not only do you have the grease on there, but you also have the cocoa powder that's going to prevent it from sticking to the sides. You can do this same thing with flour too, but since red velvet cake is a chocolate cake, we're going to use the cocoa powder. So now that those are all done, I'm going to set them to the side. And I'm going to mix together my dry ingredients. So, for this recipe, it calls for cake flour. I don't have cake flour in the house, so I'm going to make it myself. So, right here, I have 2 2/3 cup of regular flour. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab a tablespoon because I forgot one. Alright, a tablespoon. I had to go wash one. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to remove 5 tablespoons of the flour because I'm going to be adding 5 tablespoons of something else. 3, 4, and 5. So I've removed my 5 tablespoons of all-purpose flour, and I'm going to be adding 5 tablespoons of cornstarch. So what cornstarch is going to do is it's going to get in between all of those little grains of flour in there, and it's going to break them up so that they don't clump together too much, and it's going to make the cake a little more light and fluffy and airy. I got that in there. Give it a little mix so that it's nice and combined. And now I'm going to add my other dry ingredients. So here I have 2 tablespoons of cocoa powder that I'm going to add. And then here I have 1 teaspoon of baking soda that I'm going to add. Now normally we would sift these together, but since I'm lazy, I'm just going to whisk them. This will help to break up those clumps and get it nicely mixed together because you don't want little pockets of baking soda in some places and not in others because then your cake won't rise right. You also don't want chunks of cocoa powder because cocoa powder is really bitter without sugar. So So you want to make sure it's all really nicely mixed. So I'm going to mix this all together, and then I'm going to go get my KitchenAid mixer, and then I'm going to get started with the wet ingredients. So I'll come back to you when I'm ready for that. Next, we're going to mix together our wet ingredients. So to start, I've got 1 stick of butter, so that's half a cup, and this has been softened. Add this in as soon as I can get it out of the packaging. There we go. So we have 1 stick of softened butter, and I'm going to add the sugar. So this is 1.5 cups of sugar. I'm using the paddle attachment. If you don't have a KitchenAid at home, you can do this by hand. It's just going to take a little elbow grease. But I'm going to lower the paddle down in, and I'm going to beat these together until they are smooth and completely mixed together. So the butter and sugar are well combined. There aren't any big chunks of butter left in there. It's very even and mixed together. So next what I'm going to do is I'm going to add 2 eggs, but I'm going to mix them in one at a time. I'm going to show you how that goes, but you won't be able to hear me because the mixer will be running. Now that the first egg is mixed in, I'm going to add in my second egg and continue mixing until it looks about like this with both eggs in there. Alright. So they're all mixed in. It is important to know that both of those eggs were at room temperature. If you don't have enough time to leave the eggs out all morning, you can just place them in a little bowl of water that has slightly warm water in it, just a little warmer than room temperature, and then that'll help to warm them up a little quicker. So this is all combined, so we're going to add in the rest of our wet ingredients. So I'm going to start with my vegetable oil. This is 1 cup of vegetable oil. Next, I'm going to add 1 teaspoon of white vinegar. Next, I have 2 teaspoons of vanilla. And then last, I have my 1 cup of buttermilk. So I'm going to add that all in, and then I'm going to mix it all until it's very well combined. You may notice that the oil kind of separates from the rest of the batter. That's okay, because when you add in the dry ingredients, it'll all come together. So I'm going to mix this to the best of my ability until it all comes together. Pretty well combined, so now I'm going to add in my red food coloring. Now, usually you add about 2 tablespoons of red food coloring, but because I don't want to have a ton of artificial color in there, I'm gonna probably add about as much as this container is. This is probably about a teaspoon. So I'm just gonna drip this in until I have most of it in. Perfect, looks great. Now I'm going to start slowly adding my dry ingredients to this, and I'm going to mix it until it's just combined. I don't want to over mix it because then it's going to make for a really dense cake, and we want it to be really nice and light and fluffy. So I'm going to add it probably about a cup at a time until all of it is mixed in there, and I'm going to be very careful not to over mix it. So I'll come back when I'm all done with that. So my batter's come together. It's looking really nice. You want to make sure that as you're going, you scrape down the edges. So So this is my last time scraping down the edges. I'm gonna give it one last little fold through to make sure all of that flour that I just had gets mixed in, and I'm gonna scrape down to the bottom and make sure that everything is well combined. And once I can be sure that everything is nice and combined, I'm going to evenly divide this between my two pans. Now obviously it's kind of impossible to be perfect when you divide them between the two, just try your best. So we're all set with our pans. You can kind of tell that they aren't as rich red as they normally would be if you were to buy it from the store. That's because I didn't add as much red food coloring as they would. It's also because a lot of professional bakeries add beet juice instead of food coloring because that's the traditional way of doing it. It'll give it a much more rich red color. So if I had added a little more red food coloring, I probably could have achieved that color. Or if I had used beet juice, I probably could have achieved that color. But I'm not too picky, so I'm gonna roll with this, the color that it is. So now they're evenly divided between the two pans. I'm gonna put both of these in the oven on the same rack, and I'm gonna bake them for 25 minutes, and then I'm gonna come back and I'm gonna check them. I'm gonna do the toothpick test. So I will show you guys that when I get to that point. All right, so 25 minutes has passed. This is what our cakes are looking right now. Based on that jiggle in the center, I'm gonna assume that they aren't done, but I'm gonna show you how to do the toothpick test. So I have a little metal skewer here because I don't have any toothpicks at home. What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna take it and I'm gonna stick it right into the center and pull it out. So actually, there's a little bit stuck to there, so I think I'm gonna give it maybe like 3 more minutes, but I don't think it needs much more. So I'm gonna put it in, I'm gonna give it 2 or 3 more minutes, and then I'll come back. So I gave it an extra 2 minutes. We're gonna check on them again. Got my little skewer, stick it right in the center, pull it out, and it's completely clean. So these are done. So now what I'm gonna do is I'm going to take these out of the oven. I'm gonna set them right up on the stovetop on these little hot pads, and I'm gonna leave them in their pans on the stovetop for 10 minutes. Once they've rested for 10 minutes, I'll come back and I'll show you the next step. So our cakes have cooled in the pan for 10 minutes. Now it's time to take them out and let them cool on cooling racks for however long it takes for them to cool. So I have 2 cooling racks here. I have a plate, and I have a knife. I'm gonna show you how to get these out of the pan to let them cool. So I'm gonna start by just kind of cutting around the edge to make sure that there's nothing stuck. Shouldn't be anything stuck because we did a really good job at making it non-stick, but you always wanna check just in case. So there we go. Now I'm gonna take my plate, put it over the top of the pan, and flip it. You'll feel the cake drop down. If not, then it's a little stuck at the bottom. That's okay. Just give it a little jiggle until it comes out. Now you see how it's this really dark brown color? That's okay. That's just from the cocoa powder that we put around the edge. So now that I've got it onto the plate, I'm going to, let's see, I'm going to take, you want the flat side to be down. So I'm going to take the cooling rack and I'm going to somehow, let's see here, there we go. I'm gonna flip it onto the cooling rack. So there we go, I'll show you with the other one. So trim around the edges just to make sure she's not stuck in there. Put the cake, or the plate over the top of the cake, flip it. Give it a little jiggle until it comes unstuck. There we go. Looks like we lost a good hunk of cake there. That's okay. we'll cover it up with some frosting. And flip. There we go. So now I'm gonna leave those there and let them cool until they have completely cooled, and then we're gonna frost them. So while the cake's cool, I want to teach you how to make a super easy cream cheese frosting. Cream cheese frosting is what's traditional for a red velvet cake, so that's why that's what we're making. So I'm going to start with, I have here about 1/3 of a pound of cream cheese, just regular cream cheese, nothing fancy, not the whipped kind, not the low-fat kind, just some regular cream cheese. Bowl, and I've had this out for a few hours so it's nice and soft. All my cream cheese in there. Next I'm going to go in with a stick of butter, and this has also been softened. Plop that right in. There we go. And now with my whisk attachment, I'm going to close this and I'm going to whip it until it's nice and fluffy and well mixed together. So I'll show you a little bit of that and then I'll come back when it's done. Alright, so the butter and the cream cheese are well whipped together. It's nice and fluffy. So next I'm going to add a splash of vanilla. I'd say probably about a teaspoon of vanilla. And I'm going to add a little bit of milk. I'd say probably about a teaspoon of milk, maybe a little more, maybe more like a tablespoon of milk. And then I'm going to close the lid and I'm going to keep on whipping it until this is well combined. Now that that's all mixed, I'm going to start adding my powdered sugar. Keep in mind that you're going to want to scrape off the sides of the bowl as you go, because the last thing you're going to want in your cake is a giant lump of unsweetened, not vanilla-y cream cheese. So I'm going to start with a cup of powdered sugar. I'm going to dump that right on in there. Now, when I start this, I'm going to want to be really careful because I don't want all of that powdered sugar to come poofing out at me. So I'm going to want to start it really, really slowly. And then I'll just mix it until it's combined. Fantastic. So now I'm going to add another cup of powdered sugar. And I'm going to do the same. I'm going to mix it until it's well combined. So I'll come back when that's done. Alright, so we're all mixed together. Now I'm going to give this a little taste. On a clean spoon, don't worry. Alright, to me that tastes perfect. If you want it to be a little bit sweeter, you can absolutely add more sugar. If it starts to get too thick, just add a little extra splash of milk. You can kind of keep going that way. But to me this is perfect. So once the cakes are cooled, I'm going to get this on there. So I'll come back when we're ready for that point. Alright, so let's get this cake all frosted and ready to go. So first thing you're going to want to do is you're going to want to level your cake, because you'd imagine there are no domed portions to a cake. If you really wanted to, you could frost this part and flip it this way so that both of the bumpy spots are together. But I'm going to do it how I've always learned, and I'm going to look for the top edge here and the top flat edge here. And I'm just going to take a serrated knife and saw straight across, trying to keep the top of the knife level with that top edge right here, and the back of the knife level with that top edge here, so that I'll get a nice flat spot. This also gives you good snacks for later. So I'm going to take off those hunks of cake. There we go, and if you still feel like it isn't level, you can go back in, cut a little more off. Like that. There we go. So that's how you level a cake. I'm gonna do that to the other one, and then I'll come right back to you just because it takes a second. All right, so now it's time to frost. What I have here is just a paper plate that I've turned upside down, and then I have a hunk of cardboard. This particular one is meant for cakes. If you don't have anything like this, it's not a huge deal. You could easily just frost this on a regular plate or a paper plate. But I'm trying to be fancy, so I'm gonna put that down. I'm going to lift my cake and place it right on top of that piece of cardboard. So this is our bottom layer. And I've got it so that the bumpy side is up. I've got some nice chocolatey hands. And I've got this rubber spatula. It's the closest thing that I have to the proper tool for frosting a cake, so I'm rolling with it. So I'm gonna take probably like a third of this frosting that we made, and I'm just gonna plop it in the center. Do a little bit more. There we go. And I'm just gonna spread it around. This is our filling. Alright, not a huge deal if it gets a little crummy in there. It's the filling, so it's gonna be hidden anyways. And now I'm gonna top it off with this. Normally I would take the bumpy side and I would put it on the inside, but this is a lot smoother than what the other side is because the other side kind of stuck. Thank you, Rigby, for the squeaky toy. So I just took my more flat, smooth side and I faced that upwards. I'm not a huge perfectionist, or I'm not feeling like a huge perfectionist today, I guess. Usually I am. But, so I don't really care if some of the crumbs get in there. But if I did, I wouldn't want to do this because I'm gonna get a whole bunch of crumbs in here, you're gonna see. So I'm gonna take the rest of the frosting. I'm gonna get it all on there. Rigby just wants to participate in the video. Move that to the side. I'm just gonna dump all the frosting on there. Yummy, yummy. There we go. Now I'm gonna start spreading it around the top and letting it kind of ooze over the edge, because whatever oozes over the edge is what I'm gonna frost the sides with. Alright, and there we go. She's all frosted and ready to eat. Definitely not perfect, but oh boy, this is gonna be a very delicious cake. So let me know if you guys try this at home. I hope you do, and I hope you enjoy it because I've done this a couple of times and it's really fantastic. But let me know if you give it a try at home, and I hope you guys are staying safe and healthy. and I hope you have a fantastic Wednesday, and I will see you all on Friday.